First of all, thank you so much for having me. This is a tricky panel to be discussing geopolitics on. The level of experience on this panel is truly frightening, so I'm going to be very, very careful. You jumped straight into a Trump presidency. Now, I should just point out that it is about 50-50 at the moment. Nobody knows. But in answer to your question, nobody knows what a Trump presidency will be like because there have been no policies put out. Now, oddly enough, we have probably a better understanding of it on the economic side, protectionism, tariffs. We understand that. On the foreign policy side, we really don't know. Now, there is one area where we sort of know, and that is the current conflict in Gaza. And that sort of leads into the larger aspect of this discussion. When we talk about geopolitics, we want to bear in mind that the tectonic plates have shifted. The world is not what it was. But I'm not sure that the West understands that those plates have shifted or how fast they are shifting. And we first saw that, I think, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, or more accurately, the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, where the West asked most non-aligned countries to leap up and sanction Russia. And nobody did. Because at the end of the day, we are shifting from bilaterals or multilaterals into minilaterals. It is a matter of cross purposes. It is a matter of alliances. It is a matter of mutual interests. And I do think that the rest of the world will no longer be pushed into responding into a particular way. But when we say those plates have shifted, people still tend to look to the US, the EU, and China. And I think it's very, very important to realize that all politics is local. In my opinion, the US has rapidly squandered its place in the world, its power, its soft power, its position on Gaza, I think, has put it in a corner that it doesn't realize and it doesn't know how to get out of. And I do think that things are going to get exponentially worse until the elections, because nothing's going to happen until the elections. There is going to be a steady creep towards the state of Israel attempting to get as much as it needs up until the elections with no interruption. Now, the problem with that is, you mentioned Israel and Iran. There is a strong possibility that the Israelis will push up through Syria, over Iraq and down into Iran and attack Iranian energy fields. And if that is the case, energy prices go up, which will pretty much seal a Trump presidency, which of course is something Mr. Netanyahu wants. But more than that, the US had an opportunity to demonstrate world leadership and regional prowess, and I think it squandered it. Much the same for the EU. China is an entirely different matter. I think that people who look to China as some sort of counterweight for the West are mistaken. China has its own very, very specific set of interests, and they don't usually align with anyone else's. China, I think, is at best a casual partner, one that you can look to for investment, but I would hate to have to rely on it for anything. You also mentioned economics and conflicts. Now, here's the thing. When people talk about conflicts, I think it's kind of a sad case that some conflicts appear to be more worthy of attention than others. I mean, we know, for example, that on October 7th, 1,200 Israelis were killed. And in response, we've had 42,000 dead Palestinians. And now the people of Lebanon are stuck between Israel and Hezbollah. It's horrific. However, I'm don't know that many people who can tell me the number of people who have been killed in the DRC over the last 25 years. That number is 6 million. 6 million, and nobody talks about them. It's astonishing, which means that, unfortunately, news being what it is, it depends on who's got the news cycle, and it certainly isn't the DRC or anyone else. All right. But what that means is there is a lack of attention paid to parts of the world that I think have had enough of the status quo and are just beginning to realize it. Specifically, I refer to Africa and I refer to India, not China, Africa and India. You will have all heard of the I2U2, which is a purely political US invention. That's India, the UAE, the US, and Israel. But it is based on IMEC, which is the India, Middle East, Europe corridor that goes through India, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Greece. With the current circumstances, I think Israel is going to be slightly nudged out of it, but the rest remains solid. When I refer to the tectonic plate shifting, we may want to consider that we are no longer really the Middle East. We are part of the Middle East. We're also part of West Asia, if you like. We are going to be closer to India than we are going to be to the West, and it's to our advantage. I think the government of Egypt already realizes that and is moving towards that. But I think that Egypt needs to take advantage of that. You asked another question right at the end about US politics, which I haven't answered. I've forgotten.
The implications of US politics, I mean, there is a vacuum.
Yes.
And this vacuum has implications.
Yes.
And who's going to take the lead? Usually, you had superpowers more or less taking the lead, either economically or politically.
Yes.
Intervening in regional conflicts.
Yes.
Now it's very obvious that there is a vacuum.
There is
and then subsequently, we are looking for solutions. What are the solutions? Who is going to take the lead and with who? I mean, something pertinent, for example, let me just give you an example, The EU, for example, they're in the midst of it. EU, for the last couple of years, are starting to look outwards of the EU for their own purposes.
Yes.
Illegal migration, integration, near-shoring, friendly shoring.
Yes.
So there is a kind of a momentum in this direction. So there are solutions that might be led by other than the usual suspects. How does this implicate countries like Egypt or in Africa at large? That's the question.
So I honestly realize that people want a nice, easy answer to that. There isn't one. I do think that what Egypt and what every other country like Egypt needs to do is start looking at minilateral relations rather than anything else. If you are looking towards the United States to not fill that vacuum because it's removed it, if you are looking towards the United States to step up and do something, I don't think that that's going to happen. The EU is in not a much better place. I think that that gap is going to be filled more by regional actors. I think that you will see the Gulf playing a larger role. I think that you will see India playing a larger role. I think you will see China playing a larger role. It's not like the West is going to go away, but it simply does not have the pull that it used to. It doesn't have the offense. It can't make anyone do anything. But more importantly, it cannot offer the kind of aid or support that it used to as well. So you're going to have to fend for yourself.
In a nutshell, your conclusion is that we're going to be witnessing a very fluid situation or a very fluid area with with uncertainties and lack of direction.
Absolutely.
So, this is a very, very optimistic approach.
Sorry that it is. But the thing is, problems lead to opportunities. If we look at a problem simply as a problem, then it is. But it is an opportunity, and it is an opportunity for countries like Egypt to step up and take more of an account for themselves. Very, very briefly, in fact, possibly we could chat afterwards, but very briefly, there is very little daylight in between both parties. The biggest difference is that the Democrats have articulated some kind of policy, and there will be some sort of consistency after an election. whereas that is not the case with the Republicans. No policy has been articulated, and the only thing that is clear is that specifically in the case of Palestine, there are, shall we say, business interests. Specifically, Mr. Kushner is interested in building condos, but there's really no daylight in between the two, none. And it's complicated by the fact that we have absolutely no idea what the makeup of a Republican cabinet would be, because there is reluctance to join the cabinet by everyone who is not hard right.